What would you do if they told you to stay quiet when you held the power to save lives? Major Sylvie Navarro sits in the corner of the cyber warfare briefing room, fingers dancing across her laptop, keyboard lines of code flowing like water each. Function a small rebellion against silence. She is 26 daughter of Colonel Marcus Navarro, who died in Afghanistan when she was 12, leaving behind only his service medals and a worn leather journal filled with encryption theories that would revolutionize digital warfare if anyone bothered to read them, if anyone believed a dead man's daughter could inherit genius along with grief. The other officers barely notice her. Lieutenant Royce Trennan snickers to his friend. She's just here because of her daddy. Nepotism in digital camouflage. Probably can't even write basic HTML without copying from Stack Overflow. His friend Malachi Shaw nods along, agreeing with practice cruelty. Yeah, Marcus was a hero, died for his country and all that, but heroism doesn't transfer genetically, especially not to daughters who think coding makes them warriors. But Sylvie codes like she breathes natural, essential, unstoppable, her mind processing algorithms, while others struggle with simple network protocols, seeing patterns in chaos, finding vulnerabilities in seemingly perfect systems. Today's mission briefing feels different, tension crackling through recycled air, stakes higher than usual. Commander Gideon Rowe paces the front of the room, his voice cutting through whispered conversations. We have intelligence on an enemy network sophisticated beyond anything we've encountered, dangerous in ways that keep Pentagon analysts awake at night, threatening our forward operating bases. Across 3 continents, the massive screen displays network diagrams, red lines connecting hostile nodes like arteries of digital warfare, pulsing with malicious intent, each connection representing potential catastrophe. Captain Zuri Yvonne from Tactical Support adds context, her voice steady despite the implications. They're coordinating attacks in real time, sharing intelligence faster than we can intercept, adapting to our countermeasures, learning from every attempt we make. Our current defensive strategies are obsolete, outdated the moment we deploy them. Malachi Shaw from Intelligence speaks next, his tone grave with institutional weight. We need a surgical strike, something that won't trigger their automated defenses, something invisible to their intrusion detection systems, but will cripple their communications completely without leaving digital fingerprints that could trace back to U.S. Cyber Command or spark international incidents. The room falls silent, 47 officers contemplating impossible parameters, needing to be ghosts in the machine while causing maximum disruption, threading the needle between effectiveness and plausible deniability. Sylvie's fingers pause over her keyboard. She sees the solution immediately, crystalline in its elegant simplicity, a single line of code that could cascade through their entire system like dominoes falling in perfect sequence, exploiting a vulnerability in their authentication protocol that nobody else has noticed, hidden in the spaces between security layers. She raises her hand, confident for the first time in months, knowing she holds the answer they've been searching for. Commander Rowe barely glances her way, irritation flickering across weathered features. Not now, Navarro. We need real solutions, combat-tested strategies, not theoretical computer science, from someone who's never seen actual warfare, never felt bullets whistle overhead, never understood what's actually at stake. Laughter ripples through the room, cruel and dismissive. 46 voices united in skepticism. Royce Trennan's voice carries over the others. Maybe she should stick to fixing printers or helping with PowerPoint presentations. Leave the real work to real soldiers. The words sting like digital paper cuts, but Sylvie has heard worse, has learned to swallow humiliation like medicine, bitter but necessary for survival in military hierarchies that value loudness over accuracy, posturing over precision, connections over competence. She opens her father's journal, pages yellowed with age and handling, his handwriting still sharp and precise, containing insights that predicted today's cyber threats years before anyone else saw them coming. Encryption is about patterns. Find the pattern, break the pattern, become the pattern, make chaos from order, order from chaos, be water in digital stone. Her fingers find the keyboard again, writing code in the margins of official documents, invisible rebellion taking digital form, each function a quiet protest against being underestimated, overlooked, dismissed as decoration in a room full of decision makers. What would you do if you knew you could save lives, but nobody would listen because you were too young, too quiet, too female for their comfort zones, their preconceptions about who gets to be heard? The briefing continues without her input, men discussing theoretical approaches, while the real solution sits ignored in the corner where daughters of dead colonels are supposed to provide technical support and stay grateful for the opportunity to watch others make mistakes. Commander Rowe assigns teams distributing responsibility, like rations careful portions of authority. Trenton gets the lead on network penetration. Shaw handles intelligence coordination. Thea Harmon from communications takes protocol oversight. Captain Vaughn manages tactical implementation, each receiving resources personnel the power to shape outcomes. Each assignment comes with backing institutional support. The assumption of competence until proven otherwise. Sylvie receives no assignment, is told to provide support technical assistance, the digital equivalent of fetching coffee, while men with half her skills make critical decisions about systems she understands better than breathing, better than they understand themselves. After the meeting, she approaches Commander Rowe. Sir, I have a solution that could work, something elegant and untraceable, something that could end this cleanly. He doesn't look up from his papers, reviewing personnel files, planning deployments that might fail. Navarro, your enthusiasm is noted, filed appropriately, but this requires experience, field experience, battle-tested judgment, something you lack despite your academic credentials. Your theoretical understanding. She wants to show him her code, wants to explain how one carefully crafted function could propagate through enemy systems, turning their own security protocols against them, creating cascading failures that would appear accidental, untraceable to source, elegant in its devastating simplicity. Instead, she nods, yes, sir, understanding that logic bends to hierarchy, always competence yields to comfort, innovation dies in committee, while people suffer the consequences. That night in her quarters, fluorescent lights humming overhead, casting harsh shadows on metal walls. Sylvie stares at her father's journal, at the photo tucked inside the front cover, him in dress uniform, proud smile, eyes that believed in doing what's right, even when the system disagreed, especially when staying quiet meant letting others suffer needlessly. She opens her laptop screen, glowing in military-issue darkness, begins writing the most elegant code of her life, each line precise, purposeful, potentially powerful enough to end conflicts, save lives, change everything. Tomorrow, the mission begins without her. The mission launches at 0600 hours without Sylvie's solution, without her voice, without anyone asking what the Quiet One might know. She watches from the Cyber Operations Center, relegated to monitoring duty, watching other people's code fail in real time, predictable cascading errors that her solution could have prevented. Lieutenant Royce Trenton leads the first wave, his network penetration attempt crude as a sledgehammer against encryption that responds like water flowing around his attacks. Adapting, learning, becoming stronger, the enemy network doesn't just resist, it evolves. Each failed intrusion teaching it new defenses, creating antibodies against American tactics. Exactly what Sylvie knew would happen, exactly what her father's journal predicted years before anyone else understood, that future warfare would be organic, living, breathing, digital ecosystems. Commander Rowe paces behind the monitoring stations, watching failure unfold in green text across dozens of screens, his jaw tightening. With each error message, each timeout, each access denied, Sir Trenton calls from his workstation, they're adapting faster than we anticipated. Their countermeasures are learning, becoming more sophisticated with each attempt. Of course, they are. Sylvie thinks, but doesn't say, because nobody asked her opinion. Nobody wants to hear "I told you so" from the colonel's daughter. Captain Zuri Vaughn tries a different approach, social engineering through compromised endpoints, elegant in theory, catastrophic in execution. The enemy network recognizes the intrusion patterns, isolates the compromised nodes, turns them into honeypots, feeding false information back through American systems. Malachi Shaw's intelligence coordination becomes intelligence contamination, his careful plans unraveling as enemy networks feed him exactly what they want him to believe, while hiding their true capabilities, their real intentions. Thea Harmon's protocol oversight turns into protocol chaos as systems clash with systems. American military networks fighting against themselves. Bureaucracy made digital inefficiency weaponized. After 6 hours of failure, Commander Rowe calls a break, his voice echoing through the operations center. We're missing something fundamental. Their network architecture is unlike anything in our intelligence reports. Sylvie opens her laptop, begins typing, fingers moving with practiced precision, building the solution they refuse to see, line by line, function by function, a digital symphony written in code they can't read. Her father's journal lies open beside her. Keyboard pages filled with prescient warnings about networks that think systems that learn code that grows beyond its original parameters, becoming something new, something dangerous, something beautiful. During lunch break, she approaches Thea Harmon. The only other woman in the operations center, maybe gender solidarity, might overcome institutional blindness. Thea, I have an idea about the network architecture, something that might work. Thea barely looks up from her tablet reviewing failed protocols. Analyzing error logs. Sylvie, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but Commander Rowe has made it clear we need to follow established procedures, proven methodologies, not experimental theories. But what if the established procedures are exactly what they're expecting? What if we need something they haven't seen before? Thea's expression softened slightly, but her words remained firm. That's not how military operations work. We follow chain of command. We trust experience over innovation. We don't gamble with lives on untested code. Sylvie wants to explain that her code isn't untested. She's run simulations, thousands of iterations, modeling every possible scenario, achieving 97% success probability against networks exactly like the one they're failing to penetrate. Instead, she nods, returns to her monitoring station, watching men fail at problems she's already solved. The afternoon session brings new disasters. Royce Trenton's second attempt triggers active countermeasures. Enemy networks launching probing attacks against American infrastructure, testing defenses, mapping vulnerabilities, preparing for retaliation. Commander Rowe's face grows pale as intelligence reports flood in, enemy forces mobilizing based on information gathered during failed penetration attempts. American weakness exposed through incompetent aggression. Sir, Captain Vaughn reports, we have indications of imminent attacks against 3 forward operating bases. They're using our own reconnaissance against us. The room falls silent except for the hum of cooling fans and the soft clicking of keyboards typing desperate last-minute solutions that won't work because they're solving the wrong problem. Sylvie stares at her screen at the elegant code she wrote last night. 147 lines that could end this, save lives, prevent catastrophe. If anyone would listen, if anyone would trust a dead hero's daughter to know something they don't. She thinks about her father, about the photo in his journal, about the way he smiled when she showed him her first program, age 8, simple but functional, already seeing patterns in chaos. He would have listened, would have recognized the solution hiding in plain sight, would have understood that sometimes the quiet voices carry the loudest truths. What would you do if you watched people you care about make mistakes that you could prevent with a single decision? To trust the untrusted, to hear the unheard, to see the unseen. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from. Let me know if you've ever been the one with answers that nobody wanted to hear. The day ends in failure. Mission parameters, unmet enemy networks, stronger American positions, weaker casualties, mounting and forward operating bases that could have been protected. Commander Rowe schedules an emergency session for tomorrow morning, bringing in external consultants, cyber warfare specialists from private contractors, anyone except the person sitting in the corner writing salvation one line at a time. That night, Sylvie walks the perimeter of the base, thinking about patterns, about her father's theories, about codes that cascade through systems like water, finding every crack, every vulnerability, every weakness. She thinks about tomorrow, about watching more failure, about staying quiet while people die, for institutional pride, for the comfort of hierarchy, for the illusion that experience matters more than understanding. In her quarters, she opens the laptop, adds new functions to her existing code, making it stronger, more elegant, more devastating in its precision. Tomorrow, she will try again, to be heard, to be trusted, to save lives with the gift her father left her. Tomorrow, the pattern will become clear whether they see it or not. Dawn breaks gray over the military installation, matching the mood in cyber operations where yesterday's failures hang heavy like smoke from digital fires still burning in systems they can't repair. Sylvie arrives early, as always, her father's journal tucked under one arm, laptop bag slung over the other, ready to watch more competent people make incompetent decisions about problems she's already solved. Commander Gideon Rowe has called in reinforcements, 3 civilian contractors from prestigious cybersecurity firms, men with expensive suits and more expensive hourly rates, carrying tablets and confidence in equal measure. Dr. Harrison Webb from Aegis Solutions spreads network diagrams across the briefing table, pointing to connection nodes with manicured fingers that have never touched military hardware, never felt the weight of lives, depending on code his voice carries Corporate smoothness, we recommend a multi-vector approach, sustained pressure across 17 entry points, overwhelming their adaptive capabilities through sheer volume of simultaneous attacks. Lieutenant Royce Trennan nods eagerly. Finally, someone speaking his language, the language of brute force applied, digital violence. Quantity over quality. Marcus Chun from Cybertech Industries adjusts his designer glasses, tapping his tablet. With practiced authority, our algorithms suggest a patient infiltration strategy, embedding sleeper protocols over several weeks, gradually compromising their infrastructure. Captain Zuri Yvonne looks skeptical, but stays silent, knowing her opinion carries less weight than these imported experts who charge more per hour. Then she makes in a month. The third contractor, Jennifer Walsh from Quantum Defense, spreads additional charts, her presentation polished, professional, completely missing the point. We've identified 43 potential vulnerabilities in their network architecture. Systematic exploitation could yield significant strategic advantages. Sylvie watches from her corner, seeing the same mistakes packaged in expensive presentations, the same fundamental misunderstanding of what they're facing. Dressed up in corporate jargon, she raises her hand, a small gesture barely visible, easily ignored. Commander Rowe doesn't even look her way, continuing his discussion with the high-priced consultants who understand nothing about the enemy they're fighting. The morning session unfolds like a replay of yesterday's disasters, but with better PowerPoint slides and higher costs. Dr. Webb's multi-vector approach triggers enhanced countermeasures. The enemy network doesn't just adapt, it anticipates, meeting each attack with perfectly crafted responses as if it knew exactly what was coming because it did know. Sylvie realizes watching the pattern emerge. The enemy isn't just learning from their attacks, it's learning from their planning, from their discussions, from their very presence in systems they think are secure. Marcus Chin's sleeper protocols get detected, immediately turned into information highways, feeding intelligence back to enemy command, every embedded function becoming a window into American capabilities, American weaknesses, American fears. Jennifer Walsh's vulnerability exploitation becomes vulnerability exposure. As the enemy network maps their techniques, catalogs their tools, builds a comprehensive profile of American cyber warfare capabilities for future use against them. By noon, the situation has deteriorated beyond yesterday's failures into active catastrophe. Enemy forces now possess detailed intelligence about American military networks thanks to expensive consultants who solved the wrong problem with the wrong methods at the wrong time. Commander Rowe's face grows red, then pale, then red again as intelligence reports stream in detailing how their morning's work has compromised operational security across multiple theaters, placing thousands of lives at risk. The civilian contractors pack their tablets, collect their fees, and prepare to leave, having done exactly what they were contracted to do: provide expert analysis, implement proven strategies, deliver measurable results. The fact that those results constitute disaster isn't technically their fault. They followed established protocols, used industry best practices, applied lessons learned from previous engagements. Sylvie stands up, walks to the front of the room, her father's journal clutched in steady hands, her voice cutting through post-mortem discussions with quiet authority. Sir, I need 5 minutes to show you something that might save lives. Commander Rowe turns, irritation flashing across weathered features. Navarro, we don't have time for amateur theories. We need professional solutions from qualified experts. The room falls silent except for cooling fans and distant helicopter rotors, everyone staring at the confrontation between institutional authority and individual conviction. I am qualified, Sylvie says, her voice steady, carrying her father's confidence, her own competence, years of training compressed into 4 words that hang in recycled air like digital smoke signals. Lieutenant Trenton laughs, a harsh sound cutting through tension. She's qualified to watch, to learn, to provide technical support, not to make strategic decisions about matters she doesn't understand. Malachi Shaw joins in, protective of hierarchy, defensive of established order. Her daddy was a hero. That doesn't make her one. Genetics don't transfer tactical experience. Thea Harmon looks uncomfortable but says nothing, caught between gender solidarity and institutional loyalty, between doing what's right and doing what's safe for her own career, her own advancement. Captain Vaughn studies her tablet, avoiding eye contact, avoiding choosing sides in a confrontation that could end careers or save lives depending on outcomes they can't predict. What would you do if you were the only person who understood the problem while everyone else attacked symptoms, ignored causes, repeated failures with expensive variations? Dr. Webb packs his final chart, his corporate confidence intact despite morning disasters. This is why we don't rely on untested personnel for critical operations. Emotional investment clouds professional judgment. Marcus Chun nods agreement, his designer. Glasses reflecting fluorescent lights, casting small rainbows across polished table surfaces. Established procedures exist for sound reasons. Deviation from protocol leads to exactly what we've seen today, but what they've seen today is the result of following protocol, of trusting established procedures, of ignoring the person who actually understands the problem they're facing. Jennifer Walsh offers one final corporate insight: perhaps additional consultation with senior specialists could provide clarity on optimal methodologies. More consultants, more fees, more failure. Dressed in professional presentation, Sylvie opens her father's journal to the page she's memorized, his handwriting stark against yellowed paper. Sometimes the best solution looks like insubordination, feels like rebellion, sounds like a child who doesn't know better than to tell the truth. She closes the journal, opens her laptop, begins typing code on the main display screen where everyone can see elegant functions cascading across monitors like digital poetry written in languages they don't understand, solving problems they can't see. Code flows beautiful and terrible in its simplicity, 147 lines that could change everything if someone would trust the colonel's daughter to know her father's gift, her own genius, the solution hiding in plain sight, waiting for permission to save lives. Sylvie's code fills the main display, elegant functions streaming across monitors like digital waterfalls, each line precise, purposeful, beautiful. In its mathematical poetry, the room falls silent, 47 people staring at something they don't understand but recognize as extraordinary, the way civilians recognize military precision without comprehending its deadly efficiency. Commander Gideon Rose steps closer, his weathered face reflecting blue light from screens displaying code that moves like living architecture, building itself, destroying itself, rebuilding stronger. What exactly am I looking at? Navarro. Sylvie's fingers pause over keys that could change everything, her voice steady despite the weight of 47 gazes. Institutional skepticism, career-ending possibilities. A single-line cascade function that exploits their authentication protocol, not through brute force, but through mimicry, making their network believe we're one of them until it's too late. Lieutenant Royce Trent scoffs, dismissive as always. That's impossible. Authentication systems don't work that way. You can't just pretend to be authorized. But Sylvie anticipated this, has spent years studying her father's theories about systems that think, networks that learn code that grows beyond its original parameters. She highlights a section of her program, pointing to functions that pulse with digital life. The enemy network adapts, learns from our attacks, builds defenses based on patterns it recognizes as hostile. So instead of attacking, we become part of the pattern. We speak their language until they trust us, then we rewrite their grammar from the inside. Dr. Harrison Webb, the expensive consultant, steps forward with corporate authority, his suit crisp despite the morning's disasters. That's theoretically interesting, but practically impossible. No single line of code could penetrate enterprise-level security. Sylvie's smile carries her father's quiet confidence, the certainty of someone who sees patterns others miswatch. She executes the first function, a gentle probe that doesn't attack, doesn't intrude, simply knocks politely on the enemy network's door. The response appears instantly on monitoring screens, the enemy system acknowledging her code's presence, treating it as friendly, as authorized, as belonging. How Marcus Chun breathes, his designer glasses reflecting impossible data streams flowing across displays like digital rivers, carrying American code deep into enemy territory. Because Sylvie whispers, her fingers dancing across keys, they're not expecting politeness, they're not defending against requests that follow their own protocols, their own security standards perfectly. The second function deploys, still gentle, still polite, asking permission to access deeper systems using authentication methods the enemy network recognizes as valid, as safe, as routine. Captain Zuri Vaughn leans forward, studying data streams that show American code spreading through enemy systems like friendly viruses, welcomed rather than resisted, permission granted across 17 nodes. Sylvie nods, her father's journal open beside her keyboard, his theories proven with Elegant precision, now the third function, the one that changes everything. Her finger hovers over the enter key, knowing this moment will define careers, save lives, prove that sometimes the quiet ones hold the loudest truths. What does it do, Commander? Rowe asks, his voice carrying reluctant respect, institutional recognition that something extraordinary is happening. It doesn't destroy their network, Sylvie explains, her voice steady as mathematics. It convinces their network to destroy itself one authentication at a time until they can't trust their own systems, their own security, their own code. She presses enter. The effect cascades across enemy systems like digital dominoes, falling in perfect sequence, each node questioning the next node's authority, each system demanding authentication from systems suddenly unable to provide it. Within minutes, the entire enemy network begins cannibalizing itself. Security protocols attacking security protocols, authentication systems rejecting authentication systems, the network's own defenses becoming its greatest vulnerability. On the main display, red warning lights bloom across enemy territories, their communications failing, their coordination crumbling, their ability to threaten American forward operating bases evaporating like digital smoke. Lieutenant Trenton stares, his arrogance wilted, his assumptions shattered. That's not possible. One person can't, one line of code can't. But it did, Captain Vaughn whispers, watching enemy systems collapse in real time, their network architecture folding inward like origami in reverse. Malachi Shaw checks and rechecks intelligence feeds, confirming what displays show enemy communications down, coordination disrupted, attack preparations halted across all theaters. Thea Harmon monitors protocol confirmations as enemy systems request authentication from systems that no longer exist, creating infinite loops of digital confusion. The civilian consultants pack their equipment with diminished confidence, their expensive expertise made obsolete by a young woman they dismissed as theoretically interesting but practically irrelevant. Dr. Webb pauses at the briefing room door, looking back at screens still displaying Sylvie's elegant solution. How did you know it would work? She touches her father's journal pages filled with insights that predicted this moment, this need, this solution. He understood that future networks would think like living things, and living things can be convinced to trust the wrong voice. Commander Rowe approaches, his weathered face carrying new respect, institutional recognition that competence doesn't always where the expected. Uniform Navarro, I owe you an apology, and the military owes you a debt we can't repay. How many lives did you just save? Sylvie closes her laptop, her father's journal tucked safely inside her voice, carrying quiet satisfaction, inherited wisdom proven worth all of them, sir, all of them across 3 continents. American forces stand down from high alert status, their positions secure, their communications protected, their lives saved by one line of code written by the colonel's daughter, who learned to speak digital languages in the spaces between heartbeats, between dismissive laughter, between being told to stay quiet. What would you do if you held the power to save lives? And finally, someone listened. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe.